Hello, this is Haiku, here for some more historic Pauper deck techs prior to Midweek Magic. Hopefully you guys are having fun playing Midweek Magic. So this time I'm bringing Golgari. Golgari has a lot of cool stuff, but it's really hurt by the lack of removal spells at 1 mana. It has plenty of options at 2 mana, but 1 mana it's a little bit lacking. The one deck that does have really good 1 mana removal is Golgari Self-Mill. They all have a lot of overlap between the cards, but I'm just kind of going through to kind of show the kind of the different things that you could be doing with it and on the different scales of things. So on the top end of things, we'll just go start from right to left. Or left to right, left to right. The top end of things, we got Golgari Value. So this is the most intensive deck, basically. So you're playing the full 8 mana ram spells. And then you're also still playing the combo of Bayou Groff and Young Roof. I think this combo is pretty strong. And it works really well against Tithing Blade. Basically having random creatures like Khalni Garden to sack to the Tithing Blade works pretty well. We are playing with Tithing Blade. It pairs really well with Deadly Dispute. This deck is also played in Paper Pauper, although we're missing the initiative cards that really slam this and make this a control deck. This is just more kind of a mid-range. Hopefully your creatures outsize the opponents, and that gives you the advantage. So on that note, Llanowar Visionary being a cantrip, but it also ramps you into these creatures. So one nice thing about playing with elves and playing with the cycling creatures is you can play a very low land count, and then Winding Way has slightly better upside of hits. Now it's a little bit hurt because I'm playing with Tithing Blade and Deadly Dispute, so it's not getting complete hits, but Winding Way generally is going to be about a 50-50 shot, a little bit over, a little bit above 50% on the creature count here to hit with Winding Way. One thing nice about this deck is it can dig for the Masked Vandal and the Trufflesnout fairly well, and obviously those are excellent sideboard cards, which you have to play main deck to beat burn decks for Trufflesnout and to beat the enchantment aura base decks in Masked Vandal. So overall, and Tithing Blade also covers that angle as well. One nice thing about this deck is you can flip Tithing Blade fairly often and have another angle of attack if the ground gets clogged up. But again, your creatures are fairly big that generally the ground doesn't get clogged for your side. Some sideboard cards that you would play or consider in these decks. You can even go all the way up the chain, so you can go 3-4 and another 5 cantrip creature in Owlbear. It's just up to you on how much you want to play with it. I think it's a reasonable option. 4-4 is pretty big game. The other card that I didn't have here is Suffocating Fumes, which is also another good option for these kind of grindier Golgari decks. So when you attack in, having an instant speed way to shrink the opponent's board is also pretty awesome. Echoing Decay is more for Chatterstorm, but it can also function the same way if they have a lot of the same permanents on the board. All right. Going from value to the other extreme, which is just more aggro. So this card is kind of a 1 mana removal spell, and it kind of works well with some of the plan of Khalni Garden, Young Wolf kind of thing. So you Bone Shards, discard Fistsphere Gargantua, and then you can bring it back and you can put a Kaya's Ghostform on it. It's also kind of cool. The rest of the deck is basically built around getting Dryad Delirium, so you have a lot of different types of cards, although it doesn't aggressively mill itself or anything to turn on the Dryad. It just is hoping for it to happen naturally. Deadly Dispute Wellspring combo, obviously a very strong combo. And then this deck is also trying to play with Oof. I think it's another strong option. It just depends on if you run into any decks with artifacts and enchantments. Obviously, it's a super strong card if you run into those decks, and if you don't, it's not going to be a great day. Yeah, 2/2 for 2 is just not playable now, so you really have to be hitting with that one. But this deck, or the historic Pauper meta, generally has enough that this can find some hits. So next one, Self Mill. So again, these are all on a spectrum basically, and so you could play a lot of the cards in aggro or in Self Mill in aggro to turn on this deck. So one of the things you lose by trying to go mostly creatures is it's hard to turn on your Delirium creature. So this deck's not very good at turning on Delirium, but you can certainly go halfway and try to turn on Delirium with Satyr Wayfinder and Blanchard Prowler. But basically self-mill and trying to have these spells get cheaper, and then also get your elite bigger. The rest of the cards are all just cycling stuff, but then you could also bring them back with Unearth in the case that you need a lot of life, or if you want to deal indirect damage to the opponent, that's also a viable option. So that's Golgari Self-Mill. Golgari Dungeon. It's a little bit of a pet deck of mine. So basically it uses the dungeon mechanic, which is not as good as initiative since it only triggers once. But you have this, the Temple of the Lost Man. Oh man, why can I? Anyway, so basically it's a 4-step dungeon, so it allows you to complete it fairly fast and get a fairly strong removal spell that is basically a removal spell plus extra, which is nice. And then the nice part about it is since it's a permanent, you can use Revive the Shire to bring it back and get some additional value, and Revive can kind of play around and get some other things. This deck also plays with Gnarl Dryad. It can turn it on fairly regularly. So yes, and then again, it's abusing the same concept where it's allowing it to play a very, very low land count to play these. But then these also get a little bit of bonus by playing with Fates for Reversal. So you're just basically playing these on turn 1. So it ends up being split up over 2 turns. 1 or 2 mana, draw land, enter the dungeon, and search your library for a specific land and enter the dungeon. And so that tends to be okay in this deck, because you really, really want to have the dungeon completed fairly quickly for your precipitous drop. And so this combo allows you to do that fairly fast. And then again, the nice part about having these is Tithing Blade is generally able to get flipped, and then you can always bring it back with Revive the Shire if you Deadly Dispute it away or if the opponent removes it for some reason. And then also playing with Masked Vandal as a good removal spell. And then the last deck, more token deck. So the big differences between this deck is it's trying to use Glimmer Baron and Mirkwood Bats. Obviously Mirkwood Bats being so expensive and only 3 toughness is a pretty big liability, but we're trying to do this. So the nice 1-drops are Shambling Gas and Greedy Freebooter. You don't always want a treasure, so even though that mode is better, the option to nick a 1/1 is actually pretty relevant, or have this one trade up and trade with a 2/2 is pretty relevant. You get to play with this card, which is pretty cool. It's a 1 mana, Lay of the Land, find one of your basics, but then also you get to make a food token, which is pretty nice. You got to be careful though, basics are pretty low here, so you got to just watch that. And then Young Wolf Bayou Groff combo with Khalni Garden. Also, Khalni Garden gets turned on and made better by the Glimmer Baron and the Mirkwood Bats. And then basically ways to make tokens and abuse the fact that you have a lot of tokens. So this is basically a draw 2, another kind of return a critical card and make another token. This one allows you to use the Learn sideboard. So I just have all of the Learn cards castable with these colors. in the sideboard, since it's best of one, so you might as well just stuff the sideboard with these cards. And then the Masked Vandal plan. This could also be the oof, given that you don't have a lot of stuff going to the graveyard. Actually, this should totally be an oof. Oh, we have 2 oofs now. All right. And so that completes the decks, I believe. Golgari Dungeon, yep. So, yep, have fun playing with Golgari. It's an interesting color pair. It has some very powerful mechanics, and then black and green tend to pair very well, but they're just missing some key stuff to keep up with the most aggro decks in the format. Oh, I didn't call out attention to the Self-Mill deck. One of the big pluses for playing Self-Mill is you get to play with Overwhelming Remorse, which is a 1-mana Path to Exile, but they don't get a land. Or I guess this is basically Swords to Plowshares, but they don't gain life. So pretty excellent card, but needs a specific deck to go in. So hopefully you guys enjoy the variety of Golgari. See ya.